It was a chilly afternoon in a quiet American suburb when a frail, skinny boy timidly approached Karoline Leavitt outside a local grocery store. With eyes full of hunger and hesitation, he asked her for something to eat. What happened next wasn't a grand gesture, but a simple act of kindness, one that would leave a lasting imprint on the boy's heart. This true story reminds us that compassion often shows itself in the smallest moments, and yet, those moments can mean the world to someone in need. Karoline didn't hesitate. She knelt down to the boy's level, offered a gentle smile, and asked him what he liked to eat. Startled by her kindness, the boy mumbled, "Just anything." Without a word, she took his small hand and led him into the store. Inside, she let him pick out a sandwich, a bottle of juice, and even a small chocolate bar. The boy kept glancing up at her, as if trying to make sense of her generosity. When they reached the counter, Karoline paid for everything and handed the bag to him. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said warmly. "Eat well." He took the food, but didn't walk away right away. His eyes shimmered not just from hunger, but from something deeper. After a few seconds of silence, he whispered, "Thank you, ma'am. Nobody's ever done that for me before." Karoline felt something stir in her chest. She gently asked, "Where are your parents?" The boy hesitated, clutching the bag tighter. "I don't know," he said quietly. "I've been staying behind the gas station. It's warmer there at night." Her heart ached. She looked at the boy, really looked at him. Not just as a stranger, but as a child who had slipped through the cracks of a world too busy to notice. And in that moment, she knew this wasn't the end of her part in his story. Karoline knelt beside the boy again, brushing a strand of hair from his dirt-smudged forehead. "What's your name, honey?" she asked softly. "Eli," he replied, eyes downcast. "I'm 9. 9. Just 9. The number echoed in her mind like a quiet bell, ringing with the weight of everything it meant. Too young to be alone, too young to be carrying the kind of silence she saw in his face. Karoline nodded slowly. "Well, Eli, would it be all right if I made a few calls? There are people who can help. And until then, you don't have to be out in the cold." Eli hesitated, his little shoulders tensing. "They took me once before," he muttered. "The place smelled like bleach and no one talked to me." Karoline felt her chest tighten. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt you, I promise." Her voice was steady, but inside she was already weighing her next steps carefully. The right kind of help. The kind that listened, that understood. The kind this world rarely gave kids like Eli. She brought him to her car. Not to take him away, but just to sit for a while with the heat on. She gave him space, letting him unwrap his sandwich in peace while she quietly searched her phone for local resources. Youth shelters with good reputations, social workers who'd worked with kids like him, community centers that offered more than just a bed and a meal. But even as she made her notes, Karoline glanced at Eli and realized, no database, no hotline, no program would ever matter as much as someone simply seeing him, remembering his name, listening to his voice, treating him not like a problem to be fixed, but a person to be loved. And that, she decided, was where she would begin. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden streaks across the windshield, Eli finished his sandwich in silence. Karoline didn't press him. She simply sat there, the hum of the heater filling the quiet between them. Outside, the world rushed by, cars passing, lives continuing. But inside that little car, Time felt like it had paused, just long enough for something important to begin. Eli finally looked up. "Do you believe people can change?" he asked out of nowhere. Karoline blinked, taken aback by the question. "I do," she said softly. "Why do you ask?" He looked down at his fingers, now clean but still trembling slightly. "Because my mom used to say that, but then she stopped believing it." Karoline turned to him gently. "What about you, Eli? Do you believe it?" There was a long pause. He stared out the window. "I want to," he whispered. It was in that moment that Karoline realized this wasn't just about giving a child food or finding him a place to stay. This was about rebuilding something far more fragile, his belief that life could still offer something better. She cleared her throat, her voice careful. "I have a friend who works with kids like you. She's kind and she listens. If you'd like, we can talk to her together. We won't rush anything. Just talk." Eli didn't answer at first, but then, after what felt like forever, he gave the smallest of nods. They drove in silence toward the small community center Karoline remembered, a place tucked between a library and a church, where volunteers stayed late and the coffee was always warm. Karoline parked outside and turned to Eli. "We don't have to go in yet. Just sit with me for a bit." Eli nodded again. This time he wasn't trembling. Outside, a soft snow had begun to fall, the kind that made everything feel quiet and clean. Eli pressed his forehead lightly against the window, watching it gather on the glass. And for the first time in what may have been months, he whispered, barely audible, "Thank you for not walking past me." Karoline smiled, tears prickling behind her eyes. "I'm glad I didn't." Inside the building, a light clicked on. Someone had seen them pull in. And just like that, a new chapter waited behind a door neither of them had expected to find. Karoline turned off the engine, the heater fading into silence. Snowflakes drifted down, soft and slow, like the world was being covered in a fresh start. "Ready?" she asked gently, not expecting an answer right away. Eli looked at the building, eyes narrowing slightly at the unfamiliar place. The front door had a hand-painted sign that read, "All welcome. No judgment." Warm light spilled through the frosted windows, and the shadow of someone moving inside offered a quiet reassurance. They wouldn't be alone. He didn't say yes, but he opened the car door. Inside, a middle-aged woman with salt and pepper curls and a faded flannel shirt greeted them with a kind smile. Her name was Mara. Karoline had called ahead, just briefly, enough to say, "I have someone who needs a safe place. He's a little scared. Can we just sit and talk?" Mara didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Of course. Come in." Eli hesitated at the threshold, snowflakes melting on his sleeves. Karoline touched his shoulder lightly. "We can leave any time. This isn't a trap." He nodded and stepped inside. The warmth of the center hit him immediately, not just from the heaters, but from the space itself. There were drawings on the walls, mismatched chairs with worn cushions, a bookshelf with comics and old encyclopedias. A soft couch near the corner looked like it had caught many tired heads before his. Mara brought them both hot cocoa, not the kind with water, but with real milk and tiny marshmallows. She didn't talk much at first, just smiled at Eli as he sat, hands wrapped around the mug. After a while, she spoke. "We don't ask questions unless someone wants to tell their story. You're safe here. and you don't owe us anything." That sentence hung in the air like a gentle breeze. Not demanding, not expecting, just waiting. Eli sipped the cocoa. "Is it really okay to stay for a bit?" he asked. Mara smiled. "More than okay." Karoline sat beside him, not hovering, just being there. For the first time, she saw his body relax, not entirely, but just enough to exhale. "I don't know if I can trust all this yet," Eli said quietly, eyes on the steam rising from his cup. "But I want to." Karoline replied, "That's a good place to start." Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, something warmer had begun to take root. Not quite trust, not yet hope, but something close enough to feel like a beginning. Eli stayed. First, it was only for a night, then 2, then a week. Mara introduced him to the others at the center, not like a case but like a friend. He met Jonas, a soft-spoken teenager who taught him how to play chess. April, a volunteer who brought her golden retriever every Thursday, and Deshawn, the janitor who always had extra granola bars in his coat pocket. Each person, in their own quiet way, chipped away at the cold walls Eli had built around himself. Karoline visited every few days. She never stayed too long, never asked too much. Sometimes she brought books or gloves, or just sat with him while he tried to finish a puzzle someone else had long given up on. One evening, as spring teased the air with its early scent, Eli asked, "Why did you stop that day?" Karoline looked up from her tea. "Something about you made me feel like, if I walked away, I'd regret it forever." Eli didn't say anything, but he nodded slowly. His eyes were clearer now, stronger. With Mara's help, a social worker was contacted, one who actually listened. There was talk of a foster family, one that specialized in older children, the kind who didn't always smile and weren't easy to place, the kind who needed space and patience. Eli didn't agree right away, but he didn't shut it down either. One afternoon, as Karoline prepared to leave after her usual short visit, Eli walked her to the door. He tugged her sleeve gently before she stepped out. "I don't think I would have made it if you hadn't stopped," he said, voice soft. Karoline looked at him, something swelling in her chest. Pride, relief, maybe even love. The quiet kind that grows from witnessing someone rediscover their worth. She reached out and pulled him into a hug, gentle and brief. "I think you would have," she whispered, "but I'm glad I got to be part of it." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. As she stepped into the sunlight, Eli stood in the doorway watching her go. No longer the skinny boy with empty eyes, but a boy who had been seen, fed, listened to, and beginning slowly to believe in the world again. And though their paths would soon diverge, a piece of her kindness would always stay with him, just as a piece of his courage would always stay with her.